button. Oh, yeah. I think this is it. We're here. Hello, and welcome everybody to Art and Video Games. This is our first episode of Art and Video Games, the live show where we play video games while talking about art. So good title. I think everyone would agree. I'm going to start us off by introducing all of our hosts. Oh wait, first I have to get them to show up on the thing. So you're going to bear with us for a moment because we have we are still figuring this out. There you go. Okay. Yeah. Here we go. All right. So there's everyone. Okay. And then I have to let you guys see me. Yeah, there you go. Now you guys can see what's going on just here in our video chat. We good? Okay. Seems like we're good. All right. So let's try this again. Welcome to Art and Video Games, the exciting art discourse show that revolves around video games. I'm artist and talk-a-lot guy Mitchell Chan. And with me this week, as always, moving from right to left, artist Travess Smalley. He is the creator of, among other projects, Coordinates, Pixel Rugs. We have artist and game developer Matto. You know him as the developer of Night Run, the game so hot it was banned from Steam. And finally, rounding out our roster, Billy Rennekamp, author of too many projects to name, most recently co-author of Sukiya Stay Home and Viper, and as co-founder of the website Folia.app, the poor fractured atlas holding up the European fine art NFT community. How's everyone doing? Okay. Yeah, episode 1. Off to a great start. Right on. Well, yeah, so... Okay, excited to see these games. All right, so let's jump into it. So this week is our first episode. And we had this idea that, we'd begin every episode with just a little preview of the theses that we're going to put out there. And so this week, we are going to be playing 2 games by David OReilly. And we're going to play them in the order in which he released them, beginning with Mountain, which, according to my notes, came out in 2014. Then we're going to play everything. And, we're doing this thing where every week, one of us is the game master who's going to choose the game. And ideally, we'll have a reason why we're looking at the games that we are looking at. And this week, I thought these would be some great video games to play because I am not sure if these are video games. And what better way to begin an art and video games YouTube show than by spending some time with something which may not be art nor a video game. But as I will argue in the time to come, in the hours to come, it is important that we think of this as a video game, even if it is not a video game. So should we jump into it? They can't hear the... Okay, and you know what? I think, Mac... Oh, geez Louise. Okay, no, I can see where that's coming from. I can see where that is coming... Okay. Let's try this. Can you guys talk now?
Episode 1. You're talking? Video games.
Okay,
Video
yeah, now
games,
it's happening.
Video games.
Right, okay, that is great.
Video games.
Okay, so now everyone's
Ciao.
wow. So,
Yeah, I think we're coming to
great. So I'm going to assume, and let me adjust my levels here because there is an echo. I think I can do this. And now, can you guys talk again?
Test. 2 2 2
Video
2 1 1.
games, computer games, tabletop games.
Okay, I think it's working for everyone. I think it is working for everyone. And yeah, better. Okay, we're getting better. So look, this
Cool.
is going like absolutely 100% according to plan, where for the first 5 minutes of this stream, people could hear only my monologuing, which, I mean, you know, it's working out pretty good for me. Everyone else just trust me. The other comments were inconsequential. But no, this is good. So now we've got everyone here. So now we will jump into so now let's jump into Mountain. And why don't you guys, now newly released from discursive purgatory, take charge while I try to play this game. And I'll introduce this just by saying that this is how Mountain begins. It begins with these prompts, and I have to draw something, and apparently I have to draw forgiveness. So I'm going to give that a go with my mouse right now. Forgiveness. What am I going to draw for forgiveness?
I actually forgot about this part of it. I forgot that you like start with a drawing. That's actually cool. Yeah, I played this game like 10 years ago when it came out.
I feel like there's always this compromise, or like you're trying to get the player to compromise themselves to be a part of the sort of like magic circle. You sort of like make them do something stupid. So now like the barrier is lower. Like, all right, I'm like committed. I'm pot committed to this whole thing. Like I already did something stupid. Like I'm part of the stupid thing now. I can no longer be standoffish and cool. It's time to
But
shame
I always-
yourself.
It's like always like a trust thing with this part too of like I think about the beginning of Earthbound where you have to say like what your favorite thing is, or like Stardew Valley. Like there are a lot of these games where they start off with you asking you these questions. You're like, well, I know this is going to come back at some point. And you can have a little bit of, or at least I have a little bit of a paralysis there of like, what should I like? Either it's like really like the first thing off the top of my head, or like I just spend there thinking, or like go to the Wikipedia, be like, what happens if I type different things in here for this?
I was
Yeah,
just
I'm
trying to
really
do that,
curious. Oh, go ahead.
oh, go ahead, please.
No, I'm just really curious if this is actually doing anything. Because this, for those who don't know, this is a game that basically, after this point, has, I think, no input. Oh, you got to do a couple drawings. I totally forgot about this. This is good that we're actually playing it and not just talking about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So now I have to draw. The prompt is the most important thing. This is great first episode content. You're all getting to know me a little bit, you know, a little bit better, and seeing my wicked art skills too, which is super important.
It's a nice start.
Oh my god.
Yeah, speaking of like figuring out what action you do, how it's going to impact, trying to figure that out before you're willing to do it. I just took that Quantic gamer type quiz. I hadn't heard of that before you guys were mentioning it the other day. And really was like the only things I could respond strongly to were the things like you like to iteratively check over every possible outcome of every scenario and like search every corner. I'm like, yeah, like that's the only thing I want to do is like exhaustive search on every game space tree. Like that's not actually a fun gamer. Aw.
Mitch, I wasn't
Oh,
expecting something
this
so
was-
wholesome.
I'm sorry. God,
is really
I'm
sweet.
ruining it already, eh? Like I'm supposed to be edgecore. I went with
is-
the total earnest core. Happiness. Okay, no. Now we'll be. There we go. Boom. There we go. Look
The game
at
is
that.
actually just Facebook graffiti. We're all back in 2008.
There we go.
Yeah.
The almighty Canadian dollar.
Yeah, almighty Canadian dollar. Right. Yeah. Let's make sure it's a Canadian dollar. I'll draw a moose on it. There you go. You got the nice big moose antlers up here. There
Powerful.
you go. Are we ready to go now?
Really set the stage for NFT artists here.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Big
Yeah.
time.
It's interesting though that completionist thing that you mentioned, Billy. Like, it's definitely something you have to be careful of when you're designing games. Because like, I'm not done with that. It's coming. Is that now? I feel like this looks better than I remember it looking. It's like
Yeah,
more, I think it may have gotten more fancy.
I'm curious, do you have audio coming through, Mitch, or does the audience, or do we?
Yeah, the
are we supposed
audience.
to?
The audience will have audio coming through, and you guys won't, because you're just getting the camera feed of this. We're having this chat on Discord, and it looks like the rest of the audience is getting audio based on the mixer. And I've turned it down a little bit too, so you guys can speak over it. So here we are in our mountain. This is our mountain. And
so what can you do? You can zoom in and out.
yeah, let's see what we can do. Here's my mountain. Yeah, let's zoom in to our mountain.
I gotta say, I really like the visual presentation here. I just like the way this mountain looks. It's very pleasing.
It is it's a nice mountain. It's green. There's some trees on there, and yeah, I can zoom in and out. And you know, my first instinct as a gamer is to figure out what the heck I can do. Right? Can I click on stuff? No, not really. I'm just moving the camera. All right, I can zoom all the way out to here. That's as far as I can zoom out. This is as far as I can zoom in. And if you mash the keyboard, all right, these buttons, you know, up, down, not doing anything, space, not doing anything. But, here we go. So the audience is hearing the keyboard plays these tones. Oh, maybe a little ionic scale there, maybe a little mixolydian scale. Not really sure. Definitely not your vanilla major key here, I tell you that much though. And that's about it. I can make these little chimes. And
What time would you say it is there on the mountain?
Good question. There doesn't seem to be a way to find out what time it is. Let's go through our menus here. No, thoughts, sounds, autocam. No. All right. This just.
What are thoughts?
What does thoughts do?
I think it just turns on and off
thinking?
some. Yeah, it just turns on and off text that will randomly appear, I think. Like if I'm gonna leave it on because seeing thoughts is, you know, one of the only things that can happen.
Apparently we can think thoughts in, it looks like Chinese or Japanese as well.
Oh. Perhaps we can. Oh yeah, all right, we can get different languages too. This is the sum of our options. So there you go. Great stream, everyone. Good job. We played Mountain.
Good job, team.
It makes me want to pontificate on mountains and streams and like recite ancient Chinese poetry. Which makes me want to find this book called The Story of Mountains and Streams. Actually, yeah. Travis, I think it was your dearly beloved who recommended this book to me years and years ago.
Yeah, she recommended it to me too. I was like, oh yeah, I know exactly what he's going to talk about. Yeah,
it was because I was looking. I told her I was looking for a sci-fi book that was like purely descriptive, like a encyclopedia of like somewhere really great. I think it was right after Avatar came out. And I was like, wow, Avatar's really cool, but I hate the storyline. Like, I wish I could just do National Geographic Goes to Avatar. I started looking for sci-fi books like that and discovered the category of future history. So Olaf Stapledon has written a bunch in this category where it's sort of just like textbook telling you about like future universes or other ones. And this book is like a ancient Chinese version of it where they just like, there's a white mountain that's very tall, and on it they have blue flowers, and there's a troll with 2 heads, and if you kill him, you get a sword made of so-and-so. It's almost like an ad-lib, just like telling you all of these objects across it. It could really be used to like source an entire video game. Actually doesn't have as much like philosophy about like listening to the sound of one hand clapping and things like that. But that's kind of what I'm looking for while looking at this mountain, y'all. I don't know if anybody knows anything wise related to mountains that they can impart. I feel like this is the moment.
I don't have any wisdom, but that category of game reminds me a little bit. There's this game called In Other Waters that has some of that feeling where it's you play only in this kind of like flat 2D submarine map interface, and it's all about like cataloging coral and weird underwater plants. Oh, nice. Nice cover.
Cataloging them, kind of like Pokemon Snap.
Yeah, it's just like you're like a xenobiologist, so you're like, and it's this whole little ecosystem of like underwater stalks and stuff that are like emitting different funguses, and there is a story, and the story is not the most interesting part of it. It just kind of moves you through this world, but it's a kind of a very pretty minimalist with good sound, but you're just like looking at this kind of like relief map, or what is it called? A height map. What do you call the topographic map, and like moving your little spaceship icon around or submarine icon. It's nice.
It's like mapping exploratory instead of aesthetic capture.
Yeah, exactly.
I think Pokemon Snap is still one of the most underrated games of all time, where you get judged on how aesthetic your pictures of the Pokemon are. Very related to this as a athletic exercise. What is the purpose of this game with the mountain? Who is the most able to pontificate or take something meaningful from the experience? Almost, it's a competition who can figure out a way to enjoy the game or take something away from it.
I love that's the actual game. The game is actually figuring out how to enjoy the game. One of the things that I'll point out, actually, first I want to go to the comments for a second, and thank Def Beef for pointing out it is the Lydian musical scale. Play another one of that. Leave it to Def Beef to figure that out for us, or to know that. And Plutonium's wondering, about the title of the book, but I guess we can type it into the YouTube chat or whatever. No, he says thanks, Billy, he got it. I'll just point out that the entire time we've been talking, right, since I stopped talking, I also stopped doing anything in the game, right? The camera zooming in and out is sort of happening. Well, no, I mean, it's not sort of, like, it's definitely happening all on its own. I'm really doing nothing except looking at this mountain and chatting with you guys and listening to you guys chat about mountains and reference books that impart wisdom on mountains. And I'm really laughing that this is the game that we're starting our stream with, just to show off how action-packed and thrilling every other episode of this is going to be. But it does ask the question, right? The question that I want to ask is, what is a video game, right? And there are any number of definitions of what is a video game that I think we could apply. And I think this software that we're looking at right now would fail all of those definitions. I don't think there's a definition of a video game that this passes, right? And when you think of, there's so many different types of games, and I know recently, we've been kind of quoting books and exchanging readings and stuff about them. And you can think of a book as, or you can think of a game. First of all, as one of the things I've been talking about a lot lately is that it's some sort of aesthetic, it's an aestheticization of agency, right? It is a game, whether it's a digital game or an analog game, is a system where a person can do something and enjoy the ripple effects of what they do in the system, or enjoy how the absurd constraints of the system force them to move in aesthetic or unpredictable ways, right? That's one simple definition of a game. And this doesn't have that, right? Except for the really basic thing of I can literally scroll around the mountain to make it look different. I guess I can affect the aesthetics of the mountain, but it's so superficial. That would be such a tenuous way to actually acknowledge this as a game. Is there any way that you guys can think of this as a game?
Well, I think there's one thing, right, that I guess we haven't seen yet, and spoiler alert to everybody, but there are objects that appear on the mountain periodically. like kind of beach balls and planes stuck into the side of it, which are kind of surprising and pleasant. Again, there's no expression of agency, but I do think it's this. Well, just to quote the marketing copy here from the Steam page: features, no DLC, time moves forward, things grow and things die, nature expresses itself. So those are the features, the key selling points of this, which I think is interesting as like a framing.
What an awesome feature list. Time moves forward. Oh yeah, real-time entropy, baby. Not even real time, just like, but like, let's just say roughly accurate entropy simulator. Pretty great.
I think I just had an existential crisis. I might have figured out what a game is.
Oh,
I just repeat
amazing.
that: existential crisis. Might have figured out what a game is. I want to use the Bernard Suits definition of a game, which is voluntary attempt to overcome unnecessary obstacles. I'm just thinking, like, what are the unnecessary obstacles in this scenario? And is it just time? Like, time might be the only unnecessary obstacle, because in this simulation, theoretically, if we had control of the game developer environment, we could make all of the things happen when we wanted to. And so the constraint that's put upon us is that we are unable to control time. Oh, did I win a trophy? Is that what is that what just happened?
You won the existential crisis trophy.
I do think that's pretty provocative though, because I think it's a little bit of it's a boredom challenge, right? It's like so many, and I think it's also right. It's presented as a video game on Steam, so people are going to encounter and think about it as a video game, and probably be frustrated by it initially, right? Or kind of confounded, right? And I think also like the idea that they start actually with this kind of open-ended interactivity, which I had actually forgotten about the drawings, right? So that kind of gives you some sense of like, hey, you're going to be able to interact here, but then you get presented with this very flat surface of interaction, with just being able to control the camera and then wait for things to happen. Is I think like a kind of a frustrating experience if you're coming from the typical kind of like I'm an all-powerful killing machine video game experience. And then in that kind of situation, then time really becomes time is the opponent, right? It's like, can you sit here and watch and wait for like a beach ball to appear on the surface of the mountain?
Well, that's a really good point that you brought up, and it's something that I thought about a lot, right? Because I'm sort of, I'm trying to a little bit play devil's advocate here in the talking about this not being a game. But Matt, you mentioned a few really key things. One is that it's presented on the Steam store, right? That's a really deliberate decision by the artist like David OReilly, whose practice, we haven't really talked about, but maybe we can get into a little bit later, right? Present even that feature list, however tongue-in-cheek it is, right? It is presenting it as a game, and my point would be that even though like this is fails in its sort of mechanics, right? It fails in its guts and its constituent parts to be called a game. It has to be considered as such because that's what its creator chooses to do, and that by framing it as a game, you do set up that greater game that Billy was talking about, right? The game against boredom, right? the game to be entertained, the game to be content with what you're seeing in front of you, which, our first reaction when we turn this thing on, right, Matt, I think you said, oh, this actually looks a lot nicer than I remember. Like, this is, a fairly beautiful aesthetic piece of digital art. It's quite calming. And it's like, in the sort of like post Duchamp era, which we can, talk about a little bit more later, there's this idea of, art by nomination, right? Or art by fiat. There you go, there's my trophy, right? But this is like this is my rant. Like, this is my real rant about this. Is the best term that I heard for this was art by fiat. And shout out, it was a lawyer who told me this term. Her name was Amy Adler, and this is how she described what Duchamp did, right? Art, Duchamp has authority, and therefore by his fiat, such and such will be art. And it's a conversation we've had, which is that the only thing that it means to be art doesn't mean it's good, doesn't mean it's bad. It means that it's requesting a certain disposition from the viewer. It means that it's requesting contemplation. It's requesting that you consider it in a different way than you would consider an instrumental product or a useful product, right? And like, this game is like David O'Reilly doing that trick, but with games. By calling it a game and setting it up and selling it on the Steam store. We get all amped up. He's asking us to expect this to be an interactive experience. Then he takes away almost everything that would constitute like a commercial video game interactive experience, which leaves us to contemplate like what our interactive experiences are. Does that make sense? Oh.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think also, unfortunately, I got to jump out for a second, but I'll try to return in a minute. But I think that the thing that there's also the interesting fact that, like, I just did the Steam revenue calculator.com numbers for it, right? And you can put in the reviews and figure out how many copies roughly something sold. So this is about $630,000 worth of revenue at $1 a piece, right? So we're talking about a large number of people who have had this experience, right? Probably a much larger number than if he had gone and put it in an art gallery. And I think it's a much more interesting gesture. If you had encountered this as like a projection or a screen in a gallery, it would have had a very different impact and reached a very different group of people and probably been a lot more boring.
Well, yeah, I agree with that completely. And Matt, I know you got to go, so don't be shy. You got some real life stuff to take care of.
Yeah, I'll jump out and rejoin. I'll keep myself here and just mute myself and come back when I can. Thanks, y'all.
Sweet.
One of the things I was wondering, and maybe it doesn't even matter at all, is so like that perspective of deploying it in the game context does something really meaningful. And I was just looking up like David O'Reilly's, say, exhibition history or something like that, and it's definitely not nothing. You know, he's been in a handful of biennials, etc. I kind of thought of him as primarily a game designer and animator rather than artist. So like game designer dabbling as artist or artist dabbling as game designer, and just wondering if that context changes the meaning of either of them. You know, who is the audience it's seeking to have validation from? Is it intended for an art audience to be able to make a gesture to the fact that there was a game audience? Or is it actually just primarily destined to that one-to-one gesture towards the game audience?
It's a great question, and I mean, you know, without being able to peer inside David O'Reilly's head, right? We know that this game, I believe it was like released, like when it was released, they had like a release party at, not the LACMA, the other Los Angeles County Museum of Art, the other one in Los Angeles. Anyway, but like it was released at an art museum as a work of art, right? And like, you know, it's easy, like kind of once you get there, just be satisfied with that. And when you make a piece of interactive software, there's actually something kind of safe in it. You know that it'll be, you know, in a gallery, in a museum, some person might, you know, stand in front of the interactive display and spend sort of a few minutes with it. And you're kind of free from the critique that will come with a game audience, right? One of the terrifying things I think about releasing an artwork on Steam, I haven't looked at the Steam reviews of this game, but I've looked at the Steam reviews of other art games, right? And they're brutal. Steam reviews of art games are like, this is not maximizing my GPU. Like, I cannot believe this is slowing my thing down, and it doesn't even have like accurate like raycast shadows and stuff like that. But you know, I gotta believe this is a meaningful attempt to engage with that audience, with a general audience, presumably because the artist believes that there's something about creating this conflict, this struggle against boredom in all people. I go to an art museum, I kind of expect to be bored. No offense, right?
Is that it though? I don't find it particularly boring. Like I think of like Penn and Teller's game where you drive a van or a truck across the desert and you're doing it in real time and you have to always kind of keep your hand on the steering wheel or you're going to crash as more of a gesture towards boredom. Like this feels like maybe more like just stripping away elements of a game. And so you're left with something that's like sort of sandbox, but also, background, maybe like a second screen kind of thing also that you just kind of keep up. I know that like there have recently been games like around keeping a succulent garden that's growing in real time, you know, and there is like, and there is that moment of interaction at the beginning where you have the drawing happening. And maybe this conversation would change a little bit if that wasn't there. If it was just literally generate seed, or every time you start it up, it's like a different kind of rock in space.
Do you want to start up another one and see if it's different?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, we should do that, right?
We're gonna lose all our progress.
So that okay, I mean some other interesting things, right? There, like you see, there is no save game, and actually, there is no save game, and actually there is no like return to menu. There is no option to return to the menu. There is no option to save the game, which I love. That's really great. So let's give it a shot. I'm gonna boot out of the game and try to start up a new mountain, right? And then let's see what happens. Okay. Bear with
I mean that already also seems something, right? Like the fact that those aren't options.
Yeah.
Like, in terms of stripping away interaction, right?
Yeah.
It's a good call.
Yeah, it's like it's stripping away. Like even
we got also want to call.
Quit.
We have I think a great question for probably we can ask for all of our games that we're going to talk about. How do we speedrun this? How do we like tool assisted speedrun this? Like what are the ways that you overclock the CPU so it runs faster?
Yeah, I wonder. It's just probably going off system time.
I think speedrunning it is actually just going to Steam and then like writing a heartfelt comment. Just looking through them after you mentioned that, most of them are like opportunities to be vulnerable. Right. And I think that those questions that set you up really, they're meant to like put you in an introspective mood. I'm thinking about things that are important to me, and now I'm like slowing down. It's slow web stuff. It's a exercise and meditation, introspection. And I think to speedrun it, you just have to like show that you went through that entire emotional cycle faster than anybody else, and you have to document it by commenting on the public area.
So Billy truly did win Mountain by being the first person here to have an existential crisis. Just amazing, man. I knew this guy's skills were good enough for the pros. So I did quit I quit the software. All right, and I did just restart it, and this is where it is. Like there was no menu. It just launched me right back to our old mountain.
No option.
There was no option to start a new mountain or anything like this, which brings me to a good point. So this is a spoiler alert for the this is a spoiler alert for the end of this game, and also a teaser for what I am now most definitely going to post as amazing outtakes from the first episode of the Art and Video Games stream, which was, I'd been playing this for a little bit in anticipation of the stream, and I've seen some stuff happen, right? I've seen stuff fly into the mountain. I can't believe nothing's flown into the mountain yet, but as I was this morning, I was doing another like dry tech run, setting up all this stuff, and I was struggling with the capture card, trying to get it to go between this application window and the PS5 where we're going to play the next game. And so this was all happening off stream, but you could see my reaction. And all of a sudden the screen went white and it said like a giant cube from hell has crashed into your mountain. Like, and the game was over. Like the game did end. And I hadn't booted. Yeah. And so we got that in the outtakes for the show. Tune in. We'll post that as bonus content on the channel, everyone. But and that's why we had, when I fired it up right now for the stream, you got the beginning prompt and we got to do the drawings again. So it's actually very fortuitous that happened.
Oh wow! How long did it have to run before that happened, though?
I've been leaving this thing just on my computer for a couple of days, maybe. Like maybe
That's the
not quite
move,
48
right?
hours,
Yeah,
maybe
it's just
36 hours.
I was gonna say
you
I
just have
scanned
it
the
on.
Wikipedia and it said something around 50 something hours. Something crashes into it and it explodes or dies.
Yeah.
Spoiler
I
alert.
mean, this
But it
also
was
brings up all the durational games like Cookie Clicker, or like the kind of clicker, the games that kind of live on your computer for years that are kind of running on the side. And it's just like this is, yeah, it's taking as much away as possible, right? Or not as possible, but taking away a lot of those options.
Yeah, but actually you're
Which
right.
gets
The game like
into,
Go ahead, sorry.
oh, like there's like the whole modded or adjacent to speedrunning communities that are around like hard limits in games. Like, I'm going to play this game, but I'm not going to use any items in the toolbar. Like, I have to do everything through like social manipulation. Like, trying to beat Minecraft without holding any items in your toolbar the whole time. So it's about you being on servers and talking to people and convince them to like do something for you so you can beat the game. Like, all these ways of like removing features and stuff so that to change how you interact.
Oh wow, I was like not familiar with that like play style.
Yeah, like in Beauty of Games, like Frank Lance talks about like game science. He mentions that word a few times, right? As this like, yeah, as like as all of these kind of emergent ways that players and uh, tinkers or people that want to modders like start to change it, to remove it, and to change how you interact with it.
Yeah, well,
Like a
it's
dream
funny when you
scenario
talk.
from a game designer perspective. It's of longevity for a game to keep going. Sorry, Mitch.
No, sorry. And also, just so you know, if ever I seem to cut you off, we have a bit of a delay, so just power through me, and I'll stop, please. I don't mean to be rude.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll back off. That'll be the kind of standard layer order. But I was gonna say, like, you've pointed out when you're talking about Cookie Cutter or Cookie Clicker, and like games that go, that just kind of run in the background beside you, durational games you're talking about, and you kind of identified like two different play modes, right? And one is the initial play mode of I log into the game and I'm clicking stuff and I'm trying to make peace with what I can do and what I can't do, and I'm trying to overcome boredom. And like it is a game about just learning to appreciate this thing that is happening. Every now and then we get this commentary here. I have no words for this starlit night. Well, apparently you did, bud. Like you interrupted my spiel to type that. But anyway, I won't be offended. And like that's sort of like the first game is acceptance. That's the first play mode, right? And then it is like the game mode of the mountain as constant companion, right? Just as sort of presence in your life. It's like the second phase of gameplay. And it is funny that these are really different. And I've played these, both this and everything as well. I've had sometimes everything in particular, right? I'd like, have a party and I would just run everything on the screen. Because it's a nice background to have on as a party. It's like aesthetic, it's a weird thing, it's a conversation starter. It does that thing that actually the kind of artwork that you buy for your living room should do. So that's great. But, I spent a lot more time actually trying to play these games this week in preparation for the stream. And, like, I know it logically and academically that it's a different experience to try to play it. But it's cool to feel it. It does feel different actually just clicking around and really actively being with this thing where nothing happens.
It's also like the idea of the zoom in, the move around, the manipulation of something that you're much larger than. I think a lot about how like previous generations there was like train uncle, or like the person the person in the basement who would have their whole basement was turned into like a landscape where they would have their model trains. and this kind of world that you could build out in a lot of detail, like both through parts that you ordered online, but also you would custom make buildings that you from your town or something that you would place inside of it. And like that there's a lot of sandbox simulation type experiences that kind of highlight that same feeling. And it's like a feeling, oh, there we go. What do we get?
Something happened, guys.
Stop. What have we got?
We got a tricycle. We got a This is going on the highlight. We're gonna outtake this, put it on our TikTok feed. Something actually happened. And look, when I click it, it makes a little bell sound.
Wow.
Look at this content. Oh, our viewer numbers are up huge now. I'm sorry, the tricycle cut you off.
I forget already.
Sorry.
No, that's okay.
I mean, it just made me think. I have a rest in peace. Had a real life model train uncle in Atlanta, Georgia.
Oh, that's right.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Full basement. Yeah. It was so cool. Like, they exist. They're real, and I think they're very popular in Germany too. So,
yeah.
It's like where America and Germany still bonds.
And so it's like,
but the seeing something large, or did that kick you off again?
Well, no, I think that I don't know what you call that. What do you call that desire of this kind of little world that you can hold in your hands? This little like kind of thing, like the simulation that you can watch play out. There's this person that when I started looking into like procedural game design and procedural generation in games, there's this one person who did, I guess like around wave function collapse maybe, but Oscar Stahlberg, who made this little game called Town Scraper, where you it's just like a little island and you design a tower that then kind of turns into a town. And it's kind of compositionally very similar to this. It's like this frame is filled with water. You have this little island and you're literally just extruding out towers and buildings that are procedurally reshaping, and windows are going away and reappearing. And I don't think there's any game mechanics.
These were viral.
It's just
on Twitter. I kept seeing these on Instagram or Twitter every time there was like an update. They're really beautiful. If anybody else is familiar, just Googling Townscaper. Well, we'll probably.
Oh yeah, Townscaper. Yeah.
This is the kind of like gardening player type, though. Is this what you're sort of getting at, or is it more about the like God mode, see it all at once?
Oh, that's an interesting, like, I don't know. That's like God mode versus gardening mode.
I guess gardening is like a subset of God mode, potentially.
But this game is like it's indifferent God mode. Like, like it is truly the God mode for the God who cannot be bothered to interfere with the affairs of mortals, which is I think beautiful. And one of the ways that this is different than a townscaper type game, or even even a gardening type game, is like the removal of almost any dopamine loop, right? And even with a model train, there's well, it's true. I
love that. Yeah, it's like dopamine's gone. Yeah, I get it.
Like Townscaper does have this, like a really subtle game design thing, right? But it has these nice little like feel animations, and it's like game designers have gotten so good at making sure when you click something, right, and it's not just that your tower appears, it animates, it pops, it expands in a little like a punch motion path in some way, and it makes a satisfying little bloop or bleep or whatever, right? You get feel, a little camera shake or something like that. And there's always an aspect of admiring your own handiwork. Which is, it's almost a form of narcissism, right, or self-admiration. Not that I think these are vulgar things to do. I actually think it's quite beautiful to tend a garden and then enjoy the toils of your labor. But this removes even that, all right? And there is no sense of enjoying something I created unless you want to take very literally the idea that those drawings we made at the beginning had some sort of impact on this mountain. And like another spoiler alert, the first playthrough I did on a mountain which was annihilated by a hell cube, looked pretty much exactly like this one. There was like no meaningful difference. You know, maybe the layout of the pixels in my drawings like provided a different random seed for the way that these trees are laid out on the mountain, but it was pretty similar. But yeah, we don't even have that. We don't even have building something and admiring it and learning to be satisfied with our modest creations. There is only being satisfied and feeling pleasure that something exists. Which I love.
Oh, it's I love thinking that the drawing's a placebo. Like, it's just not even, it has no effect.
That part's really tripped me out. I'm like, no, but it's real. But no, but they want you to think that it's not real so that it can't be real, and then they'll surprise you. But maybe something also important to point out here is that you can interact. Like, I was just thinking again about the definition, or what we've been using the word zero-player game, and like in this one, there's this scale of like dramatic tension, and that scale is all the way down. You know, there's very little dramatic tension going on, and you know, you picked up this thing talking about Suika, which was like, you know, my attempt at a zero-player game. I was like hilarious. I felt like it was hilarious that there was some dramatic tension, even though, you know, I'm not playing. And we talked last time a little bit too that I'm mostly like a game watcher. I've had like roommates and friends who are great gamers, and I'd like almost rather watch them. But it also makes me think about this project. Travis, you went to school with Will Simpson at Cooper. I was in high school with him, but he told me about like a sculpture class project where he brought in GameCube and had Super Smash Brothers, 4 players, all 4 computers playing against each other, and showed that as like a sculpture. And like that is the drama on the fullest scale. You know what I mean? Like if Suika is a mid curve and this is like low curve, the idea that you like, it's a 0-player game where you're trying to create as much ludic competition and tension as possible, like that one is where I would see sort of that maximizing on that scale. Whereas again, this mountain one is really, they're just pulling that lever as far down as possible.
Yeah,
but still
I don't
letting you at least move, I guess. I mean, I don't know if the movement is an impact or not.
I don't think you're alone, Billy. I think that most people kind of feel that way. And like, in terms of the act of game as entertainment, in terms of like an interaction aspect of it, or as like a thing to think about. Like that's why like Twitch is so big. There's some game, I don't know if y'all know or someone in the chat knows, that it's like a Street Fighter clone that's on Twitch, where it has every character from every 2D fighting game, and you can also kind of import your own character models, and then people bet on it, and so you're watching, like, take any 2D fighting game ever, but then also people make characters all the time, like it'll be Peter Griffin or something fighting Wolverine, and the whole thing is you're just you're betting and watching these AIs fight each other. I don't remember what this is called. I have to look it up.
That's so good. Cloud Gardens from the chat. I want to miss that.
Oh, right on. Yeah, great call on the lack of tension, because that's a thing that I hadn't thought about, right? Even as performance, right? You don't need interactivity at all to create tension. Yeah, there was a tension in Sukiya Stay Home, and there's a tension in 0-player games. And here there's like, and there are actually a number of really smart design decisions like that I think David O'Reilly makes here. And it's funny, right? Because to make a game completely stripped of all of these game components, you kind of need to think about and understand what game components are, right? So we've pointed out the lack of any menu options to quit, right? The lack of ability to do like basic interface things. But yeah, even just spacing out how infrequently things hit our island. And you notice we got another exciting update on the stream. Here comes another thing. What are we getting?
Oh, is that a soccer ball, Billy? Billy, was that a soccer ball?
Please be.
This is a phone.
That's like a
cell
door
phone on our island. This is a film reel.
That's a wheel.
Film reel.
Yeah, but I was gonna say that things do smash into your island or into your mountains so infrequently But there's not even really a sense of tension about that. And that's a smart design decision, right? If I'm making this game, I'm not sure if I have that confidence to say, well, stuff will happen, but maybe only like every 9 minutes. You know, takes a lot of confidence to make that decision, I think. And you got to really know what it is you're trying to achieve. Because even, you know, as a creator, maybe you guys feel this as well whenever you guys make projects, the urge to make stuff happen is really, like, it's really powerful. Maybe it's a good thing because, you know, this is why you're an artist. Ideally, you want to make stuff happen. But it's really hard to not make stuff happen.
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, you know how, like, when, you know, you ever have a project...
You're asking Travess, who's like the #1 digital person who never puts pause or stops and continues iterating and making variations. Like, that is his whole practice. Throwing that mentality out the window.
Yeah. No, it's just like when I create
That was a serious question. What do you mean by that? I don't...
He straight up doesn't understand. Well, so Travess, a normal person will at some point think, you know, maybe I should stop cramming stuff into this PNG file. You know, we'll start thinking maybe 40 megabytes is a big enough PNG file. And we'll fight against the urge to keep on cramming, to keep on making more and more stuff happen on their canvas.
Yeah, I think the infinite options makes it even harder to know when something's done or to when to stop something, or not to think, oh, but maybe a variation of this would be better, or maybe if I add more. Like, the optionality makes it really difficult to draw those lines. And I think, yeah, often it becomes an exercise of being good at drawing those lines, or good at stopping, or good at removing things, because it becomes really easy to add things, and often to the detriment of a work. Or you just overdrive it.
Yeah.
Like,
and I'm sure in the not too distant future we'll play some games that overdrive it.
well, it's a.
Yeah. Also, sorry, if that feels like a mischaracterization of your work, Travess, I meant that as a compliment.
No.
I think
That's right. I think that, like, there's at least in terms of thinking about game design, the idea of scope, you have to set scope so early, maybe, or like, otherwise does it happen? I think about the idea of planning that, but also, like, I think the other thing I think about with this is just the idea of synthesis. Like, whatever you're researching, whatever you're experimenting with, how do you smash it together to make something special? And, like, I mean, also, it's maybe like workflows and stacks of, like, being in Unity, and, like, when do you introduce a new feature that, while it might make some kind of new emergent thing happening, it also makes all these new bugs that you could spend the next a long time. Oh, yeah, there we go. Nice wrench.
all right.
I don't know how I feel about things flying into it, honestly.
Yeah, do you feel like it would be better if things didn't fly into it?
Too much. It's too fast.
Yeah, it is. It does say something that every time something has, like, flown into our island, we've kind of lost our train of thought. Like the banter has suffered every time that something's entered our mountain.
Yeah.
Which is great call. Maybe that might be a fair critique. Maybe it should be less. It should be just like 50 hours of this, and then the mountain, you know, explodes, and then it's hit by a hell cube or something. I'd buy that as a fair critique. Because I
think it was Andre who said, "Go for it."
No, please.
Oh, Andre in chat said ant farm, and I was thinking about this compared to, like, maybe some of the 90s Maxis games. Like, think about Sim Ant, or like, where the simulations at least gave the feeling that it was alive, that it was changing, and where this doesn't really have a feeling of being alive at all. Like, I don't get the feeling, or even, like, to investigate those trees to see if they are, like, growing a pixel every 5 minutes or something. Like, that doesn't really seem to be at play here.
That's funny, because I do get the sense that it's alive. And some of that is because time passes, as was one of the features in the Steam feature summary, right? Some of it is time passing, the rotation. and of course the fact, and this is where stuff flying into it does matter, right? Stuff happens to it. I get the sense that it is alive, just not on our time scale. Because it does,
I almost feel like that's a diss, Travess. Like I'm trying to think, like, if I think of this game favorably, then I'm like, yeah, then it's real. It's real time. It's a real universe. It owns its own sort of like destiny. Every time is unique. And if I'm like, maybe this game kind of failed, then I'm like, yeah, it's just repeatable. It's copy paste every time. You know, it's not live actually, or it's like. I almost feel like it's more time. Of a, do you like the game?
Yeah, this is a good time. Let's bring it. Let's bring it to our review. Billy, do you? I want to ask you two questions. Do you like the game? And the key question, because we are the key arbiters of this. Do you like the game? And is it art?
Oh man. So first off, is it art? I'm going to give it an easy yes. I think that it's really easy to justify anything's art, and it's a fool's errand to try to argue against it. Is it good art? I'm really glad it exists. Like, I think it's important for art like this to exist, but I still think that we could do a lot better. So I want to say it's bad.
Okay, great take. Do you want to expand a little bit on how we can do better? I know you just kind of said, like, a little bit of, like, copy paste stuff, things like that.
I don't know. I feel a little unfair calling it bad because it's simple, it's elegant, it's the 1-2 punch. They lure you in with like a questionnaire, they give it to you. The aesthetic is spot on for like the video games and showing up in Steam. Somehow it just doesn't spark joy in me though as an aesthetic. Like all of it, like I'm glad it exists. Like I will celebrate it. I will give it art prizes, but I will personally not say that I love this.
Okay,
that's fair.
Travess.
I
love this.
Yeah,
it's great.
Yeah, for me, it's like it hints at a possibility space, right? Like it hints that there's like a lot of like if we take any aspect of this in terms of thinking about taking elements out of a game to then make some kind of experience that's interesting or worth having on in your house for multiple days, and then having this moment of shock when, like, yeah, that's awesome. I think that anything that can kind of do that, and that's kind of tricky to do anyways. I'm kind of also feel like I got to give props to like just what did Matto say, 600,000 in copies sold, right? So like that it's like to get this in front of
numbers
people.
Don't lie.
To get this in front of people, like I think that's really cool. I don't know. Like I think that the place that I land at on it is that it's in a space where you could do so much. There's so much type of interaction that can happen. There's so much type of observation that can happen. And this might be referenced historically in the future when we're looking at games that maybe to work with this kind of these limitations. And I mean, isn't that kind of where we're going to go next? Is like kind of how he played with these limitations and what kind of came forward. Yeah, it kind of points, Conway's Game of Life is huge for me. Like the kind of simulation, these kind of moments, that kind of these pocket dimensions or pocket worlds or the Minecraft seed are all like really powerful ideas with me. So I can always kind of get on board when anyone's taking a stab at this. And I actually really liked what you said about the idea of it, like just being on when people come over. And like that being a really nice place for it, and it kind of speaks to that thing I was talking about like someone playing Minecraft without actually interacting with the game. It was about interacting with people on servers and trying to get them to do the game for them, right? That this can be this framework for other types of interaction that aren't even the game itself, which is cool.
Great. I mean, so we're turning into this is like a really fierce criticism show. This is great. There's no easy likes from this panel. You got to earn it with this panel. But I will take. I actually feel a lot. I feel a lot more positively about this piece, and like fairly unequivocally. And to offer my brief critique and review, I would say like that this is really good art only because it is a game, or I should say rather only because it is framed as a game. Travis, what you said about there are so many possibilities, and Billy, what you said about we can go further, I agree with that completely, right? I mean, we've all we've talked about games and artworks we like that go really, really far in this medium, and that better explore all the things that the medium of video games is capable of when employed by artists. And this artwork, this game, does almost none of those things, right? And we even explore some of that stuff like in our own work as well. But there's something elemental about it, and by framing it as a game and taking everything away, the idea of what a game is feels so strong to me in all of its absences, right? And the one thing that this game does, the one thing that this artwork does, which is invoke a state of zen, right, is a thing that actually not that much other artwork I think achieves quite as well. And we can talk about other static visual artworks that attempt to achieve some kind of quiet contemplation. And I could even go, hyperbolic and talk about like a Rothko or something like that. Something you're just supposed to stand in front of and meditate with. But somehow, like in the year 2023, it actually feels so much more powerful. I don't want to say more powerful. It feels like a worthwhile alternate strategy to put a controller in somebody's hands and ask them to do that and give them a real struggle to do that. That seems like a really valuable and worthwhile twist to put on the demands that a lot of art makes for you. So I'm going to say good art, not a game, but only good art if we call it a game.
I really like the way you phrase it of like putting a controller in someone's hands, like that is an integral part of this game. It
totally is. And I think it's an integral part of so much stuff that we're going to talk about, hopefully in the coming weeks and months and years. But so that was Mount. Should we flip over to everything and try David O'Reilly's follow-up project?
Let's do it.
All right, you guys got the. Okay, you got time? All right, let me see. So let me see if I can kind of elegantly switch over here. And we'll see if anybody has any... I'm really impressed how many people we have in the comments here for our like very soft launched first episode. I hope we still have you. I hope we haven't lost you. Hope you didn't go into a state of Zen nirvana, blissing out on Mountain. And now you can see this is... man, let me tell you, compared to Mountain, this is basically like... This is like Overwatch, man. This is like League of Legends compared to the last game we were watching. So you're going to be thrilled.
I've been keeping a track of like all the kind of references that we have. So hopefully we can kind of compile that later. So if you all could like also write down things too, that'd be great.
Yeah. And... Oh, come on! What'd I do wrong here? Okay, give me a second. Entertain the company for a moment.
See a lot of friends in chat. Thanks for coming out. Yeah, what'd y'all think of the game?
We got Lorna Mills.
Can we get some reviews from the public?
Yeah, Lorna Mills says it would be lovely on a giant screen. but I don't want to sit in front of it. Fair enough.
Better than Death Stranding. We got that. That's a take right there.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow. All right, we're almost here. Give me just a second. This was the moment I was. This was like the moment I spent like an hour prepping stuff this morning specifically to make sure that this moment didn't happen.
I mean, this is also really complicated, right? You're going from PC to your PS5, right?
Yeah, but I'm going there because I chose to, because I'm an idiot.
Gotta reset the modem, yeah. Steve, I like it as conversation fodder. Yeah, I think I agree. I actually really like what Mitch said about just like having it on when people are over, which actually made me think of Lorna and how like Lorna like displays work in their house as just like all of these different ways of kind of having things on, soaking it in.
I like it conceptually, and I want to talk about it and tell people about it, but I don't want to have it on. A good counterpoint somebody mentioned in the chat was like Ian Chang's Emissaries, where like I would love to have those on. Like those feel like live simulations if we're talking about like Alive versus Dead or Real, or like something new is going to happen from this completely new environment versus it's the same thing that happens every time you do it.
Like that you're looking for those kind of things. I can't tell if it froze or not.
No, I think we're back. We're almost there.
Cool.
Okay. Boom, here we go.
Also, like on the classic of mountains and seas, I was thinking about Allison Knowles' House of Dust, right? Like, or Dick Higgins and Something Else Press, and like all the artists that were working with like computation to make these kind of generative things in the 60s. And I don't know if it was also the 50s, right? But yeah, I think classic of Mountains and Seas is a really interesting one in terms of thinking about the sandbox of world generation.
And what
we are.
What a segue, Travis. Thank you for that. Speaking of a sandbox of world generation, that's exactly what we have here. So here we are in the David O'Reilly's follow-up to Mountain. There's a piece called Everything. And whereas Mountain had a laser focus on presenting you with a mountain and almost nothing else, Everything takes as its scope everything. So, all right, let's play Everything for a little bit. I've loaded up. This is a game that I had in progress, and there's like not too much like different in the tutorial, so you're not missing too much by coming in kind of mid-game. Right now, I am a tree, and the tree moves through the planet like this. And as I come to other trees, I can do a little dance. The other trees like my dance. And now, I'm a palm lily tree. And now I'm many different palm lily trees. And as I see other trees, now I'm a palm lily and also some sycamores. And I move through space like this. I can go a little bit faster, but not by much. I can find some more trees here. And now I'm many, many trees. Guys, that text
Does that just pop up periodically?
No, that's the first time that's happened. It's great. We got like a really, really exciting moment on stream. That'll be on the highlight Twitch feed for sure. As I go from being sycamore trees, there are other things here. I can go and be... Here's a stone tower, and now I can be the stone tower. Sadly, there are no other stone towers around, so I'm kind of a lonely stone tower, but I can still do my little dance like this. Here's a rock, and it's thinking. Let's see what the rock is thinking. The rock thinks, rocks are people too. What are people, though? Great question. Not a rock. I'm kind of sick of being a stone tower. It feels a little bit lonely, so I'm going to be a rock. And now I'm a rock. And now I'm many rocks. Oh, and I'm some rock pets. And there's some animals. And I can do a couple other things. So as you see, I can go across the world and I can just be different things. And you can obviously see, I think, the same vibe leitmotifs that we had in Mountain. Like, this is a game that is very much just about existing, although I have a few more options and some agency in terms of how I can exist. And if Mountain was about being one thing forever and doing nothing except being that, everything is sort of a moving in between different types of things that you can be. So now I am desert grass. I am desert grass. And now I have more plants. Now I'm other larger plants. One of the kind of biggest features of the game is that you can ascend or descend scales. So if I'm desert grass, obviously I am composed of... What am I now? Actually, I don't know what I am right now. Oh, I'm just little tiny saplings. You can see I'm at a smaller scale. That stone tower that I used to be, it's way up there. And it's blurry because I'm some kind of little sapling or something like that. And we'll scale up or down. And this is basically the full game. Let's see if I can scale up for you guys. Yes, I can ascend to being a whole tree. And this is it. Let's see if I can be a bigger tree. I can't be a bigger tree. You can only be things that are roughly the same size as you. And if there is a challenge, the challenge is basically to find things that are just big enough that you can still be them, but slightly bigger than you, so you could maybe scale up to being a bigger thing. Things are really organized by space, by size.
Like Katamari, where it's just like you have this range that's like near you, but it can't be too big, and then you can't,
exactly,
right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's giving everything all at once. Is that what the name of the movie was? Everything everywhere all at once?
Okay, so there you see. Now I've scaled up from a stone tower. I'm now allowed to be an island on this planet. Right? And I can join up with other islands. Now, soon I'll be a whole... Oh, no, now I'm a cumulus cloud.
Was that heart? There were like heart particles that showed up there? What was that about? Like, was that like...
Oh, those are just...
Mating?
I'm doing a little dance, so now I'm a whole planet. Now I'm a whole planet, and I can... Right, do a little dance, and when I press one button, I can press the square button, and I can join up with other things. And when you press the square button and join up with other things, you become like a tribe, and you move together. So we'll see if I can quickly get over to these other planets. Maybe we can team up, and we can all be planets together.
And the UI right now is just that sphere or the circle at the top, right? Is there any other kind of one screen?
That's it. That's it. There are little sort of like voice dialogue things that you can get, and they play dialogue of. Maybe we have some like physicists in the crowd who can tell us where this dialogue is coming from. It's like a thing. It's like it's not Richard Feynman, but it's like Richard Feynman-esque, talking about the interconnectedness of things and the possibility of things being sentient and stuff like that. Here we get some text. Seeing pleasure as good are literally hundreds of others, but try to how swift oblivion will come, and before you. Listen. Now, folks, I did not experience a stroke while reading that. That was actually how the text was written, the syntax and all.
In chat's asking if you can swap planets. Can you zoom back in on a different world?
Okay, yeah, let's see if I can do that. Okay, so, yeah, because that last planet was kind of boring. Let's see if I can descend. Yeah, I can choose which planet to descend into.
Oh, nice.
Let's choose. Ooh, that planet looks fairly Earth-like, so let's go into that one. Oh, look, I'm a boat. I'm a cruise ship. Oh, this cruise ship moves pretty fast. I wonder if I can find other cruise ships. What would be really nice to find is like sea. There's nothing spotted. Oh, look, here's another ship. Now a cargo ship.
Island.
All right, let's descend into the island. I'm a luxury yacht. Okay, this luxury yacht is on land. You can. Yeah, so you know, I mean, there's some clipping issues, you know, from a programmer's perspective. Had you guys played this before?
No,
Once,
it's
a long time ago.
it's giving. I haven't played it. I'm familiar with it. Watching it is like giving me strong No Man's Sky kind of Infinite Planets energy, and that was like one of the things that was, you know, one of like the takes on that when it first launched was how empty the planets felt, that compared to like what the what people were like, this kind of expectation that people had about how much stuff should be going on or how diverse each planet should be.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, so Garrett, now we're in a city. Look, this is really happening. This is basically Grand Theft Auto 3 at this point. Yeah. Oh no, there's that without clipping.
And what's like the limitation here? Like you can become buildings, you can become
everything. Like there's not a single thing not in this game that you cannot be. And so now I'm a whole bunch of cars and lampposts.
Is it directed to the point like if you want to be that building right there you can be, or is it like
Yeah,
you're not sure?
Let's
Like as a goal, like.
Yeah, let's be this building. So now I'm a building. I'm a Georgian home. Now I'm many Georgian homes. Now I'm a whole neighborhood. Aww, the street lamp says I want to die. That's really messed up. That's really messed up. That's a street lamp. That's not me saying that. That's a street lamp. Well, maybe the street
Can't help but
lamp-
keep thinking about this in comparison to Katamari Damacy.
Yeah.
And like, I don't want to. Like, I feel like I need rules. Like, I'm somehow like frustrated by the lag.
Well, that's a
Oh,
really good
I'm not.
point, right? Games are.
Well, like, I guess I feel. Yeah.
But this has lots of rules. You're moving in directions.
It's true, right? Yeah.
You can't go
there
through
are
the ground right
rules
now.
Yeah, and there are rules of how these objects can and cannot relate to each other and how we can travel between them, right? So, but there are no, like, objective rules. Let's descend. And now, look, now I'm a can of tuna on the ground. I like the way the can of tuna moves.
Matto's back. Hey.
Hey!
I'm back.
Yo.
I'm back, and
Matto,
Mitch is a can of tuna.
You missed some really wicked like final reviews of Mountain, and I gotta say this is going great. This all portends very well for the future of the art and video games stream, because like we had a couple thumbs down, we had a thumbs up. There's been like some disagreement about how much we enjoy the art and the video games, which is fantastic.
Terrific. Well, I won't force everybody to listen to a recap on my behalf, so please continue being a can of tuna or whatever it is you're doing now.
Well, now I'm a roach. and I'd love to
Hey.
let's descend even further and be some plant matter.
This is like comparing this to everything. I'm sorry, to Mountain. This feel like when I was talking about the idea of like of the, even if it's not real, like the idea that it's living, right? Even the idea of simulation feels so much stronger here, right? It feels like it's not up to a game designer to make every system like it is, like to complete every system in a world, but to create the illusion that every system is at play. And at least on first look, this is doing it. It makes me think though. There are two things I was thinking about. One was like in relationship to Billy being like in terms of rules, and that like this feels like it's in that space of sandbox games of making your own rules. I could totally imagine getting together with people and being like, virus percent. Who can become a virus the quickest, right? Or like, or black hole percent. Like who can be a black hole the quickest? Like this thing of like timing yourself, like who can get to this thing. And it also makes me think like, and maybe Matto can speak to this, like in terms of game design, but as players, how we push to limits, like to understand what is allowed and what is not allowed. Like I can touch this, but I can't touch this. I can get this size, but I can't go any farther past this. Like once I'm at planets, do I become galaxies after galaxies? Like this area that we all have kind of game players have literacy in, or at different levels of like trying to figure out where those borders are.
100%. No, I think that's actually a lot of, well, like one of the things I think that's really fundamental to games, right, is this idea of a bounded space, right? Like a bounded space of rules, and that by not just making it the infinite
creature, therefore, which feels that it is human, and which knows that it's there in the same way as you know you're here, experiences being here as constituting a sort of blockage. The sensation of a sudden tension, which constitutes the feeling of I-ness, of there-ness, of being here. Because after all, every creature is a particular form. Everything is individual. Not only you as a total organism standing here, but all the component cells of your body. Each one of them has some sort of a feeling of its own. And it is individual. You can look
this is
at
almost the opposite, right? Going in a kind of a maximalist direction.
Thing there.
Also,
with its own
say,
life. And if you examine the stream of your blood, you'll find it full of all kinds of cells that are having all sorts of conspiracies and games
some great
plots and
I accidentally clicked on a thing and everything
like
that
we
triggers
do.
the narrator. And then I turned down the wrong audio feed.
We realized that we wouldn't be healthy as a total organism.
You muted my amazing.
I did.
That was great, Matto. That was
my
wonderful.
valuable thought.
It was good insight. And now
by the mute button.
This fucking Richard Feynman wannabe and everything won't shut up
because they're being organized.
Isn't it supposed to be an?
I think that what you're describing though.
Yeah.
That description though of like finding the boundaries is maybe actually what made me frustrated. It's like maybe this says more about me. Like I either want to like be good at a game, or I want to like figure out like what's wrong with the game, or like do something else inside of it, like break it, but like push against those boundaries. And like in a game like this where there are no boundaries, I'm like swimming, and I'm like I need something to push against. Like let me play against it, or let me like do something that it's not intended to, but everything is intentional inside here. Like no matter what you do, it's part of the like plan. And I think that drives me crazy.
Yeah. No, well, I think that, because you know what it is. It's like, I think that, or like in kind of like game philosophic discourse, right? We have the idea of the magic circle, right? Which is like inside the magic circle are the rules of the game, that kind of the suspension of reality and the rules of reality, right? And that's what you're looking for. And I think that's what, especially in video games, right, where it could be very big or very small, right? And finding those boundaries is a lot of the pleasure of understanding the system, right? I think a lot of the pleasure of video games is understanding and unpacking the system and kind of mastering it just by understanding it, whether or not you're killing something or competing or whatever, but just being like, I see, okay, this is the edge, and then this is the circle that I'm playing inside. Now, what are moves that I can make within that circle that might be expressive or fun or interesting? And yeah, you have something like this, which is kind of violating that and just saying like, no, yeah, there's no wall to push off of, right? Like you're just swimming in like an ocean, which, and I confess, I don't like that either as a game design aesthetic, right? I kind of like things that are more tightly packed and have more of that feeling. So it's an interesting one.
Yeah, I like to just live in them, though. I think that there's so many different ways of playing games, but so many kind of simulations and games like this, at least for the first hour or two, it's very much role play for me. Like I want to just be that thing and kind of live in that world and trust it for a bit before, and then after a while, then it's like, okay, where can I go with this? What's underneath the ground?
Yeah.
What's above? What's in the sky? Where's the key to do the to like follow the trail? But I think for that reason though, like whenever you look if you go to like time to beat and like look at the how long a game takes to beat, my run times are usually at the very long end of things because of this. And it's partially of like poking, like, oh, can I go in that room? Can I go in that door? Can I open that toilet? But it's also like vibing, being there, smoking it.
I do feel like that's actually a really important thing. And that's something like looking at Mountain or something like this. They're very strong on that dimension and maybe weaker on the kind of crunchy rules-based gameplay, or something like Minecraft, right? Which I know you're a fan of, and is like not very goal oriented, right? Just it's this kind of just big open-ended simulated world that you can just kind of hang out in or define your own goals. Like, I'm going to dig to the bottom of the world. I'm going to build a huge castle, whatever. And I think that's actually something that video games, specifically in contrast to like board games, have this like feeling of aesthetic presence, right? Where you're just kind of vibing with the art and the music and the atmosphere and just kind of inhabiting a space and kind of chilling out there, which I feel like Mountain is pretty strong on. But you're not like playing chess and like doing a bunch of crunchy system modeling in your brain of like, oh, the knight is going to do this and then the queen is going to do that, right? It's kind of a different kind of aesthetic pleasure that I think is very much coming out of graphics, music, colors, all those kind of things, which I feel like a lot of game, like it's almost like, I don't even know if that's the game part of it, right? That's more like a simulation or something that we're just enjoying for its kind of tactile qualities or something, which is kind of different from like a system of rules and goals.
Maybe my brain's kind of broken though, because I totally resonate with what you're describing, but only when there's like an objective that I'm not following at that moment. You know, like go do this, save the thing. Like, okay, cool, but actually, I'm gonna go shoot the shit and wander and just like waste time. I love doing that in the game, but only somehow it only feels like if you tell me that's what I have to do, then that's the last thing that I want to do.
Yeah. It has to be a counterpoint. Well, it's funny. Like, here's where I come from on this stuff, right? Is that first of all, like, I'm very much more like I'm like Billy, both as a player and like as an artistic philosophy, which is that I believe in rules. I like rules. I think the fact that games have rules is what makes them potentially powerful as an art form, right? And, you know, I just wrote like, you know, a whole essay about this that was published on Outland, who plug by next week, as soon as we get Wade in the fold, will be our official presenter of episode 2. But I deeply believe in this, that to fully tap into the potential of games as a medium, you must embrace the fact that games have rules. Rules are the way that they can simulate, you know, the real world, and thus say something. So normally I'm like that normally I feel that way in a lot of ways. But I guess where my appreciation for these are coming from is I don't even look at them as art games. I look at them like what these pieces do. It's just similar to what a lot of digital art has been trying to do like for decades, right? Which is to be a contemplative experience, right? To sort of subvert technology in a way that uses it as a space for contemplation rather than distraction. And it turns out that even when you are just scratching the surface of what a video game can do as an art medium, you can still make, I think, extremely effective digital art. And that's how I feel about this. I feel like these, really just scratch the surface of what an art game can be, but honestly, they're better at artistic goals than most digital artworks that don't put a controller in your hand.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting perspective. I mean, I think that there's definitely, especially like for oh shit, my battery's gonna die on my laptop. For goals that are like for games that are less goal oriented, this might do something weird to my screen because it's going to connect to my monitor. It is this kind of like expression of this system, right? And understanding the system and exploring the kind of volume of possibilities, right? I think is a big part of the pleasure, which we definitely see in things like generative art, where it's like, oh, we're kind of looking at all these potentials and kind of then trying to reason backwards about the nature of the system that created them, right? Whereas obviously with games, it's much more immediate. But I do think there's a similar kind of aesthetic pleasure there.
Well, I think that these pieces that we're looking at here, Mountain and everything, are much less directly representing systems thought, right? They're much less direct aestheticizations of systems than a game that actually has rules would be, right? Like you need to like, because as like, Billy's pointed out, there's not a lot of rules, which means that there's not a lot of sense of a system. What the artist has done is create a sort of very poetic, impressionistic idea of, in this case, the system of the interconnectedness is everything, but there is no homology between the system through which these things are represented in the game, where I click buttons to move from a thing to a thing to a thing, to be bigger or to be smaller, and the structure through which systems are connected in the real world, which could be almost any kind of system that you want to think about, right? Your potential ways of interpreting the interconnectedness of everything is so large. You say the other things are interconnected in that we share atoms, we breathe the same air, we whatever, we share resources. But this game doesn't take on any of those. The system through which the things are connected in the game is not any of the multitude of systems through which things are connected in the real world. So it's not, none of these I think are systems art at all. And in the way that, video game art can do really well.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, though. Do you really think that what I hear you saying is like that the point of games is to like describe or maybe like metaphorize about reality, which I don't feel. Mm-hmm. I feel like that these are kind of aesthetic objects which should really stand on their own with their own internal logic, and they don't need to make external claims or statements to be appreciable or beautiful.
Yeah, that's a good point. And to be fair, when I talk about instrumentalizing like games to be
exactly, it's like it becomes a
that's
tool.
That's my beat. That's my beat. But you're right. It doesn't have to be your beat, right? Like game art can be, just chill Zen aesthetic experiences like this. And EW asks,
or super like rigorous.
Mm-hmm. EW here asks,
I mean, it makes me want to get into the sort of like game.
I don't know. Can you win? Can you win everything?
Billy won Mountain. We all agreed he did.
Oh, what happens when you try to restart? Does it give you the option to restart?
Okay, cool. Yeah, let me see if I can do that.
That's a good
or does question. Do you always come back to this world?
I can exit. I can save and exit.
Save and exit without saving though, which implies that it would be different, right? If you came back.
I wonder what data it's saving. Is it just saving like your location?
Or something?
Yeah, are there achievements? Are there PS5 achievements for this?
Yeah, so okay, actually this was a really interesting thing, and I wrote this down in my notes, right? The game, both this and Mountain, try to shed every aspect of what a game is supposed to be in terms of instrumentalizing things, incentivizing things, providing objectives. But they still have trophy lists. And you will do something in Mountain, and there will be a trophy that comes up in Steam, or there'll be a trophy that pops up in your PS5, right? And that's really interesting. And I wonder if that is a decision on the part of the artist, but it honestly seems unlikely to me, given the extent to which they have made a direct effort to strip other gamification elements out. And instead, it is a tragic statement on the impossibility of producing just Zen chillness, right? Within like the commercial game space. I'm sure that it's a requirement to be published on the Steam store or the PlayStation store to have some trophies, right? Yeah, Conrad has asked.
I don't think it is for Steam.
For PS developers. Yeah. Like you actually aren't allowed to not gamify your Zen.
It makes me think that it's evidence that the projects aren't good. They compromise themselves. they can't even stick to their own shtick.
There's a lot of games on Steam that don't have advancements.
Yeah, it's not a requirement. Steam does not require achievements. I know this.
Okay,
for sure.
So they chose to do that.
On Steam. Yeah.
Okay, so David O'Reilly
now on PlayStation, I think Sony may require you to have achievements. Like the console platforms are a lot more prescriptive that way, but Steam is pretty open ended. So you know.
But even if you look at this, right, it said there were some metrics that it gave you, like 147 things or something. What did it?
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah,
that's how many.
So it is. It's gamifying it, right?
Yeah,
it's
this
quite
game a lot more so than
Mountain. Yeah, it's.
I support providing texture. It seems like I accumulated things. Like, is that a thing that I should be doing or not? Like more things that you can grasp onto to maybe like provide your own sort of narrative or structure is, I think, a positive quality with this sort of like otherwise open-ended art game characteristics.
Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting one. Going back, yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead. I'm gonna veer off, so you better.
Yeah. No, well, what I was just gonna respond to what you said about having a kind of like completist kind of gamer profile. It's something that you have to be really careful with when designing achievements for games, because there are definitely people out there who have this kind of pretty compulsive relationship to like platinuming games, right? Like getting every achievement and unlocking every piece of content. And as a designer, if you put stuff in that is like, like when we were working on Night Run, I was like, oh, let's put in a thing where like after you drive 1,000,000 miles, you get it, right? Like that's kind of funny. And then like, Josh on my team, who's like, no, because somebody will like kill themselves trying to get that if they want to platinum the game. And that's going to be like a horrible experience for them, like, so I'm not that kind of player at all. I almost never finish games ever, right? I just like play enough until I understand it. And I'm like, okay, I got it. I've eaten enough. I'm full, but I definitely know people who like Josh, the main dev on Night Run, like, he platinumed Elden Ring, you know what I mean? Like, he platinumed it like a week after it came out, you know what I mean? Like, which is like such a different way of relating to it than me, but it's like you have to be careful what you put in there, because some people might really take, like, in Super Meat Boy, there's some like fucking horrible achievement that's like just incredibly difficult to achieve, and there's like people still trying to achieve it and really angry at Ed McMillan for putting it in there, because like it means that they can never like 100% this game that they love. So there's a weird kind of dynamic there.
In Stanley Parable, which is a really wonderful game talking about player limitation and player literacy in terms of understanding what you can and can't do in the environment, the advancements for that on Steam are hilarious. Like, have it installed on your computer for 5 years. Like, it starts to play with that format of like, stand in this one room for 15 hours. Like, it's like the arbitrariness of it. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
which is interesting, right? It's kind of like durational. You like making the players do like durational Marina Abramovic performance art, like suffer for their achievements.
Do you guys platinum games?
I want to jump back
are you a
to
serial
the
platinumer?
No, I've never platinumed a game. Maybe Pokemon.
Yeah, I would say that that part of games, the metrics of it, totally, it's a hook that I get. And it, like, for instance, like Elden Ring, right? I'm at the place, I am right before the final boss, and I have every possible ending ready for me. So I can make this save, and then I can go through each ending, so I can knock off the last like 4 achievements, so that I don't have to play through it 4 times. So there is like a little bit. I get that. Like, I get it, and people talk about like, oh yeah, that's a game to platinum, or like, or not. But yeah, I get it. I also find it incredibly. I see it as hooks. I see it as these kind of ways of manipulating me. I don't know how I feel about that, but I'm there.
Yeah, no, I think there
it.
can be a kind of like toxic element to it for sure, like weird kind of S&M vibes. Like, I'm gonna force you to do this.
I wanted to bring it back a little bit to this tension you all highlighted between sort of like the artwork and the game, or the function of a game, or can the game be self-contained or something. And I feel like we often get in the weeds of talking about games and art on these 2 different spectrums that actually I feel like need to be pulled apart. And there's like games which achieve like a status of masterpiece, which are sort of like, can be like called art as sort of achieving this perfect balance of infinite play space for creativity, for new things, for emergent behavior, for sort of like the peak of its performance. And then there's art which achieves the status of game. And I think the thing that I'm always like struggling with is like, why can't they be both? Or like, what could possibly still achieve both at the same time? Where you come in as an artwork to the realm of games, you're like, see, I have the materials of game, I have the rules of a game, I am a game, even though I'm coming from the world of art. And then still, while being evaluated as game, be able to achieve like some sort of next level of like, oh, actually, it is so good as a game too, that it sort of like, it merits this mirror applause or something like that. Like, that for me, I think is the killer combo that would be the best possible thing to see or play or make or like aspire to exist in any capacity. And I don't know if it's actually possible. And I think that, yeah, like a lot of these conversations we have often will, like, we think about it like, oh, actually I'm talking about a game that's like achieving art, or, oh no, and they're talking about like art, which is achieving game. And they often are very separated, but I'd like to think that they maybe could be the same, and curious what you all think.
Well, I would just say, like, Billy, thank you for 1 hour and 43 minutes into our stream, taking us to like what I think is the soul of like this whole thing that we're trying to do and talk about, right? Because I clearly agree with you that yes, these 2 things are they should be compatible, and I believe that game is a medium and a format through which we can achieve art, and I believe that if you do it so well, that there's a way. It doesn't have to, just like not every game has to be achieving art goals to be a worthy use of your time. So does like, a worthy artwork doesn't have to be super playable as a game to be successful. But yeah, I do believe that fusion is possible. And like, I hope that over the coming weeks, we look at the games that are coming close, like that are scratching the surface of this, or where we see this potential. Like, what do you see as coming close to doing the phenomenon that you've described? And I'm sure that, the games that we think of as coming close are the games that we're going to play on stream in the coming weeks and months. But what are some examples?
Katamari Damacy came to mind while playing everything, because I was just like, why do I like Katamari Damacy is so similar in so many ways, but like so much better in this, like, oh, it hits you in the gut. Like, it's like, it's still fun as a game, but it also is still so weird and so exploratory. You can just sort of like get very strange in it in a way that I feel like everything aspires to, but like for me falls short from.
I totally agree with you there. And I feel like Katamari is one of these things that it's also, there's a visceral pleasure in the action of it. It's not like it's the art or the music, which are obviously both great, but it's like the action of, like, who knew that I wanted to be a ball rolling things up and getting bigger and bigger? Like, that's so pleasurable and satisfying. The first time you like roll up a house, it's like, it's this experience that comes out of the whole system that is like such a weird, pleasurable experience. I totally agree with you. I think it's really singular and terrific, and yeah, one of my personal favorites. Whether or not I would put it into this category, I don't know, but it's I just love it very much.
Definitely have to do a Kita Takahashi episode.
100%.
Oh yeah. I think it's also interesting, like, we learn a lot by the failures. Like, one of the things that I'm really interested in is Hideo Kojima, who is so clearly desperate to be acknowledged as an artiste, not even an artist. Like, he needs to be an artiste with the letter E on the end, right? And then I think fails really badly. Like, it always either his desire to be a successful artist gets in the way of his video game design, or his desire to be acknowledged as an artist gets in the way of him actually making good art. And that's something that I'd be really, really interested in talking about at some point in the future.
I would love to have that argument. I'm a Kojima maxi, so I will totally fight you up over this.
That's great.
I love him. I mean, I think, well, what's interesting, to go back to Katamari for a second, and maybe we can connect that to Kojima. Like, one of the things that I think is so appealing about Katamari is the absurd, what I call like video game nature of it, right? It's so explicitly a video game. It's not, it's just this little digital reality with its own very kind of inward looking aesthetic and mechanics and everything. And it's not trying to be a movie or a painting or anything else, right? It's like very clearly kind of like medium native to video games, if we want to throw that term out there. Whereas Kojima is definitely infected with the kind of cinema inferiority complex, with trying to get quote unquote real actors and all that stuff into his games. And I mean, I love them, but I do think you can see those things, and that's something that Takahashi really has not fallen victim to, and I think the work is stronger for it.
Yeah, that would have been my number one point, right? In a knock on Kojima, is he is so obsessed with the cinema inferiority complex. And like, one of the things that I think you need to make a video game that will stand up as art is to like just genuinely be happy making a video game, right? And like and to be satisfied with that is the wrong word, but appreciative of what your medium can do, as opposed to constantly longing for the type of achievement that can only happen in other media. But this is I have an idea actually of maybe where I'd like to start winding things up here. And first of all, like, let's address, there's this issue in the comments. Conrad is saying he likes Billy's mention of games that gain a huge appreciation, so much to the point where they're revered as much as great art, like Picasso's or other masters. And I would just say to that for me personally, when I think of like art video games, it is not video games that are so good we call them art, right? I'm not, no matter,
Yeah.
like
I think that's important.
ultimately Super Mario Odyssey is such an awesome, amazing experience that I can't have anywhere else, not in a movie theater or not standing in front of a painting. It's just something different altogether, and it's executed flawlessly. Like it's perfect, and I could say that about many like different games. But for me, you know, when I talk about art games, no, it's not games that are so good. I hate it when we use the word art as a stamp of approval of just you did something so good, therefore you're art, right? And art is its own category. And this is sort of, I think, maybe a fun way to go around as we start to close things out is, you know, I chose Mountain and Everything to have sort of a conversation about what was a game and what was art. And so, you know, maybe we can finish off going around and people giving their definitions of right now in this moment, right? What is the game and what is art? And if I were to start, which I suppose I am, so here I go, right? You know, an art is, and I alluded to this a little bit earlier, like it's a statement to say that something is an artwork. First of all, I'll believe anybody who says that about what they do. If you want to say this is art, that's fine. So but you're going to be assessed according to this criteria: is there space for me to contemplate this, right? Space for me to either juxtapose this against something else that exists in the world and have your art object, shine a light on it? Or is there a space for me to not just enter this little world you've created, but you give me a little perch just outside the main action zone to reflect on what I'm doing or the things that are in here, right? It's the space of contemplation. And that's a thing that typically a commercial piece of software can't really achieve because it's in pursuit of other goals, right? They typically don't want you to step away. They don't want to break immersion. And those are all things that are necessary for the contemplation. And to me, that's what the art game will be. The ideal, the hypothesized art game that Billy speculates about, right? It will be the piece of software that affords that while also embracing rather than chafing against the things that are a game, that it does really well, which are rules and which are coming alive through rules, which is making the user, the player, come alive in ways that are unexpected to them by forcing them through a rule set that they hadn't experienced before or that are exciting or surprising. What do you guys think?
I think it's a pretty good statement. I mean, I think that the thing that that I don't have fully articulated, but I think is relevant to the conversation is that I feel like both games and fine art, right, are ways of creating kind of bounded spaces, right? You say inside the basketball court, we follow the rules of basketball. Inside, you know, this painting, we follow this set of rules, right? And they're kind of, or this set of aesthetic gestures or ideas or however you want to, techniques, whatever it is, right? And I actually think that kind of the fact that we're kind of creating these two bounded little mini realities, right, which kind of exist for their own reasons and follow their own internal logic, whether that's a world of rules or a world of kind of aesthetics and ideas. I think that's where we see some of the tension that Billy is pointing to, right? Is that like why do we not just constantly see brilliant masterpiece games that are recognized as works of art, and that the Venn diagram is a kind of a circle where I feel like there's this kind of oil and water relationship between art and games, at least thus far. And I think that has something to do with it, is that they're two distinct kinds of bounded sort of idea spaces, and that may be kind of what pushes them apart.
Getting heavy here.
Yeah, it is. Well, you know, it's the time to get heavy. I think that, you know, like building on that, there's too much art suffers a lot through instrumentalization. art suffers a lot when confronted with usefulness, right? I know this because I studied as an architect and I did a lot of public art, right? And there was a lot of there, you know, all architecture has to be useful, and you know, even in public art, there would always be a strong call from clients to instrumentalize, make useful the thing that you're doing. It's like, we love that you're making a sculpture. Could it also be a bench? Like, would it be okay if people like sat on it? Because we need to satisfy some requirements. And then a couple of things happen, right? A couple of things happen when people ask your sculpture to also be a bench. Well, the first thing that happens is that now actually, could you put those little pegs on it so that like people can't sleep on it? Because there's a little bit of a homeless problem in the neighborhood, and we do want it to be a bench, but now that it's a bench, you got to do a couple things to make sure it's like the right kind of bench, right? And so that kind of creep comes into art when you start to instrumentalize it. And then the other thing that happens, right, is whenever you create a sculpture that is a functional bench, it ceases to become a space to contemplate benchness, right? Like, you are too busy sitting your ass to compliment or to contemplate what it means to sit your ass, right? And games, it's kind of something we were talking about a little bit earlier. It is so easy to make things do stuff, right? To make things release a little bit more dopamine, to make everything just a little bit more functional work. And it's not that things shouldn't work well as software, but there's something in the spirit of that drive that I know certainly infects me, that I always have to fight against when I sit down to make a piece of software that I want to be art, right? Like, the software needs to, it's like when you sit down to make a piece of software that's art, it needs to work perfectly and nothing more. You know what I mean? Like,
it's a good line.
Everything else becomes distraction. It's a distraction if it doesn't work perfectly, but then it's a distraction if it then also can do a whole bunch of other stuff.
What's the Richard Serra equivalent of like a public sculpture, which you can still contemplate if you're taking a piss inside of it, because that's what everybody does inside of them. They're all like homeless people piss holes, or not even homeless people, just like general passerbys, private spaces and public spaces.
Yeah.
But if it was designed to be a public toilet, you know, you would be able to have that contemplation of thinking about that artwork.
Well, maybe, but then, okay, so now, because it's all going to end in potty talk now, right? I would say the Maurizio Catalan toilet, it's not so much about contemplating while you piss in it, it's contemplating other people pissing in it.
Yeah, that's another good point. If we're going to go deep on that categorization. I mean, look at the logo right now. We really need to bring
that's in like reflexive, like in terms of games about games or something. Mm-hmm. Like that feels like, I think when you're talking about like, this is, I think part of this group, this kind of series, is that I'm hoping that you make me interested about this question, because it feels, when I'm playing a great game, this is not something I think about, and I think about it in its own terms of what it is and what I'm experiencing through it. And there was totally this moment with like when MoMA started acquiring games as part of their collection, that maybe I started to think about it in these terms of games in terms of an art context. But I don't know, they seem to, all my favorites, of the games I play, they exist on their own terms when it comes to that. And they can be reflexive. I mean, maybe it's the way that like The Thing or like a John Carpenter movie is probably going to be just as thought-provoking as an Antonioni film. Like, it's like and one's made for a much larger audience, I would say, than the other. And yeah, like I as a game designer, though, as a maker of games, Billy and Mitch, I think it gives you a different level of insight into this in terms of limiting yourself, and that thing that you said, Mitch, about not feeding into the dopamine hit I find that pretty interesting.
It makes me want to posit my definition of art as broken into two categories. Like one would be contemporary art, which is basically like art as an industry, and then like the more general definition of art. The contemporary one, like itself, is sort of like a game whereby the rules are defining what is art and what is good art, and that's sort of like constantly up for change and debate. And it makes me think of like what Travis is bringing up, that like those are two different audiences in a way. I mean, when you're experiencing a game and you're not experiencing it as somebody thinking of it as art, or as somebody who's like put their I'm thinking about art hat on right now, it just doesn't register at all. It doesn't need to, because it's not participating in that sphere, which is itself, its own game sphere. What is art? What is good art? How does this art change or reflect on the previous art that came behind it? Like, is this a new idea? Is this a remake of a new idea? Is this a response to an idea? Like, is it important because it's never been done? Like, all of that is itself a shifting evaluation part of like defining and defining good art in that sort of space. But if I were to zoom it out and try to give like a more general definition of like art, and it came up in one of our prior like prep sessions, just this idea of like, it's a status given to something that requests a generous attitude of consideration. And by like generous attitude of consideration, is because it could be many different attitudes expected of it. It could expect that attitude to be evaluating in the context of contemporary art. It could expect that attitude to be, looking at something my kid made, or that attitude could be, considering this film apart from other films because it's so much greater. Like that attitude is sort of like attached to the specific moment. And so like the general term of art is like, be generous in the way you approach this, because it might demand you approach it with any of these numbers of attitudes, or just like a very open-ended attitude, because it's given this, status of art that is able to demand so much from you as a viewer.
That's a beautiful definition. I love that when you said it in our prep session. I love it more now. So guys, what should we I know we're coming up to 2 hours. People got lives to live. While we're here, you want to talk about what we should do next week?
I heard a reference to Wade running it next time. I'm excited about
Oh, really?
That sounds great.
Is that planned, or would you just tossing the buck on the person who's not here?
Smart move.
Well, I made up a whole story why. I was like, oh, I bet that's why, because we're on one side of the spectrum right now, which is 0-player game, and it's sort of like approaching taking an artwork and putting game on it. Right. I kind of got the impression from the prior conversations that Wade's sort of also especially interested in these like games which reach the status of like masterpiece or something, and that maybe they were preparing some sort of a tour of masterpiece games which deserve to be considered as artworks or something like that. But now I'm like totally projecting.
Okay. Well, look, we'll figure it out. We gotta if we can hear from him today, then if we can hear from him today, then he can be game master. But by end of day, we'll figure out what we're gonna do next week. We've heard it. We've heard some heavy talk about Katamari.
That would be great.
Big talk. That would be awesome. Big
talk. Mitch, I wanted to say, I saw you pulled out The Beauty of Games. I thought you were about to do a reading there for a minute.
Oh, well, because it came up. So you want to know what I was going to read? Because this was, it was
the
conversations passed by. But it was something like, and I literally, like, I had the page set to this. But because, and so just, this is the book that, I read last week. And Travess, thank you for recommending this book, The Beauty of Games by Frank Lantz. And actually, there's a bunch of people in our Discord who were really interested in this. So thank you, Travis, for the recommendation. But Billy was talking about how he needs rules, right? And this book had a quote. It's not even Frank Lantz's quote, but it was very timely because in the first chapter, there is a quote from Uriah Harvey and Michael Salmon's Real-Time Art Manifesto. And this is super relevant because, of course, Uriah Harvey and Michael Salmon are art game pioneers, and I'm sure at some point we're going to get around to playing their games on stream under their game design label Tale of Tales. And Oria Harvey has a career retrospective curated by our dear friend Regina Harsani, who was that just opened at the Museum of the Moving Image in Queens this weekend, and Matt and I were both there. But anyway, she's quoted in this book, or rather she and Michael's Real-Time Art Manifesto is quoted in this book, and this is the quote. "Don't make games. The rule-based structure and competitive elements in traditional game design stand in the way of expressiveness. And often, ironically, rules get in the way of playfulness. Playfulness is required for an artistic experience." And that was the quote that was reproduced in that book. And I thought it was so funny because when I read this, and again, so Ori and Michael are real pioneers in this field. I don't think you could write anything about art and games that I would disagree with more than I would disagree with that sentence, you know? And so it was really interesting thing about that is the counter take.
I mean, I feel like also you have to situate that historically, right? They were really breaking with what was going on at the time. I feel like they had to create that space kind of in defiance to I mean, there were no art games really back then, you know? So they were like really breaking they had to kind of smash the mold before they could,
sure.
You know.
And I think very much in the sort of like, you know, net art, you know, like in the net art spirit and net art ethos of subverting things, trying to do the exact opposite of like what was their desired utility, like just breaking with conventions. Games obviously want to be rule sets. And, you know, the first thing that you would do, right, if you are kind of breaking ground in that is break away from that convention, like reject it completely before, you know, now, and, you know, we'll talk about this in coming weeks. Like, but for me, and clearly I think for a lot of you guys as well, no, I'm all about like finding the beauty in the rule sets, and that rule sets actually can be quite expressive, and expressive in the way that free play cannot.
I do think we should pick that. That's maybe we'll start the next episode with that quote again, so we can pick it up and actually discuss it, because I think it's interesting, and I think it points to what I see as a little bit of a bisection between what Travess was talking about these kind of vibey simulated worlds just to exist in, which I think something like Tale of Tales, The Forest, or whatever it's called, the little deer jumping game, is and works as, versus, you know, chess or Quake or whatever. So I do think that there's like, we have like rule worlds and kind of like, I don't know what we want to call them, aesthetic worlds or vibe worlds, but I think that that those are not necessarily like in direct tension.
So how about this? Maybe next week we should play something like really tight, you know, like really tight, like Travess, you know, like Travess is talking about how, you know, the feeling that he gets when he plays a really great game. We should play like a really great game, something that's like maybe like the opposite of this, you know.
I like the idea of a really tight game. I gotta think about that.
Yeah.
Devil daggers. Everybody.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking about. Like when you showed me that was
as tight as it gets.
Natto,
America's Army.
That would be amazing.
Yeah, we can. Yeah, we can. It'll be great.
Awesome.
You know, maybe. Okay, cool.
Yeah. Tight as hell. All right, I actually got to go.
We got to go. Hey guys, thanks everybody.
Love you guys.
First episode, we're figuring it out. So thanks for everybody who stuck with us to figure it out. We'll figure out the next episode off stream. And so long, everyone.
Thanks, y'all.
Super fun. Thanks, guys.